Book adaptations into TV and film can be a contentious issue. Some people love to see their favourite books brought to life, whereas others really hate that these programs often get it wrong. But whatever you feel about them, there's no denying that it always generates a lot of conversation. Personally, I'm always excited about the idea of a new adaptation of my favourite stories because although historically a lot of them don't quite get things right, I always live in hope that one day somebody will. I will even hope that we will get another Lord of the Rings. And with Terry Pratchett being my number one author, I live in hope that one day we will get an adaptation of his work that is as successful as Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films were. But did you know that Terry Pratchett has already had 13 TV and movie adaptations of his work? Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Martin. I both read and write a lot of fantasy. So I'm going to go through all of these TV and movie adaptations of Terry Pratchett's work, chronologically, but in reverse order, because I think the more recent ones, a lot of people are definitely aware of. But some of the slightly older ones, I think people have forgotten about or never knew about in the first place. There's definitely some on this list that I did not know existed. So the most recent adaptation came in 2022 with the release of the animated family film, The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents. I was actually working in a theatre/cinema back in 2020 when I first saw posters for this release. And I was really excited because from the posters, it looked like this was going to be a big budget animation of one of his best books for children. I wasn't mad on the design for the central character, Maurice. He didn't look quite right to me. But with the big names involved, such as Hugh Laurie and Emilia Clarke, I was excited. Unfortunately, when it was finally released and I got to see it, I was a little bit disappointed. It does hold together quite well. The quality of the animation is certainly not bad. It's one of the better kind of looking adaptations on this list. However, the plot and the story didn't quite hold together for me. This was made very much as its own thing. There's no mention of it being part of the Discworld or any of the wider Disc lore in this story. It's very much focused on the story of Maurice, his rats, and the hijinks they get involved in. And that is fine. I think that works within the construct of this movie. However, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme on this list, the humour didn't always come out quite right, whether it was down to the animation or the script or just the way it was directed. Often the laughs fell a bit flat. Moving backwards in time, we have the animated short, The Abominable Snow Baby. This is a little kind of Christmas-themed short. I don't have much to say about it because it's based on a short story that A, I haven't read, and B, I haven't seen it. The animation looks quite cute, and it's definitely something I'm going to have to check out at some point. But to be honest, on the list of Terry Pratchett works I'd like to see adapted, this wasn't on it. Back in 2020, we had the release of the now infamous series, The Watch. I cannot tell you how excited I was for the release of this series. The Night Watch, the City Watch, whatever you want to call them, are my favourite characters in the Discworld. They're some of my favourite books. This was what looked to be a high-budget adaptation with BBC. I could not wait. I thought this was going to be fantastic. And The Watch is such an obvious group of characters and a group of books to pick to adapt. Like, they're police procedurals at their core, and that tends to make for a good TV show. However, the result in this case was, in my opinion at least, something of a disaster. There were clearly, it seems to me, two teams working on this project. One team who wanted to make a Terry Pratchett adaptation, and one team who wanted to make some kind of steampunk, cyberpunk show. They made a lot of changes to the source material, which isn't always a bad thing, but in this case, a lot of them were not for the better. And unfortunately, I just felt like the script did not hold up, even if you looked at it as its own thing, separate of the Discworld entirely. There was some very sloppy CGI and some pretty extreme character changes, so extreme that you wonder why they even bothered to option this series in the first place. I think they would have been much better off going their own way, making their own separate show, and in the process then they wouldn't have annoyed thousands of die-hard fans in the process. I live in hope that this will get picked up again one day and someone will take another crack at it, because I think that The Watch is definitely one of the best options for an adaptation. Moving backwards in time now to 2019, we actually have two separate adaptation releases. The fan-made Troll Bridge and the now internationally popular Good Omens. We'll talk about Good Omens first because I think it's definitely the most successful adaptation on this list. There's no doubt about that. From high quality production values to an absolutely stellar cast, this was kind of set up to be a success. I don't know the figures involved, but I'd be very much surprised if this wasn't the adaptation that received the most amount of money. It's propelled David Tennant and Michael Sheen to new levels of fame and has definitely, I think, introduced a whole new lot of people to Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Because, of course, this series is based on Good Omens, the book that was co-written between both Pratchett and Gaiman. Gaiman also acted as showrunner for the first two series, which seemed like an absolute boon, until, of course, the recent issues Gaiman's been having. With allegations of sexual abuse circling him, Gaiman has now stepped down as showrunner for the third series, and what was going to be a full series has now been truncated into a TV movie. Hopefully we'll get a satisfying conclusion to this story. Obviously, it's gone way beyond what the book initially showed. Time will tell, I guess. But in 2019, we also had the release of fan-made Troll Bridge, which is at less than half an hour, a kind of glimpse at what could be. Following the Discworld character Cohen the Barbarian, not only is Troll Bridge very, very book accurate, but it's also pretty good to look at. As with many of these adaptations, as we'll see as we go further back in the list, the budget involved in bringing the Discworld to life is obviously a huge issue for any of these adaptations. And Troll Bridge is by no means perfect in this regard. A lot of it looks fantastic. Some of the CGI is obviously done on a budget. That being said, it still looks pretty good. But it does make me wonder what they would have been able to do if they'd picked a story that would have relied less on CGI. I actually only got to watch this for the first time very recently because I'd never managed to get hold of a copy. I didn't realise it's free to watch right here on YouTube. Next, we have 3 TV movies that I've lumped together, and that is the Sky adaptations of Hogfather, The Colour of Magic, and Going Postal. These were released by Sky as kind of TV special events in 2006, 2008, and 2010. And they still stand today as probably the best full-fledged Discworld movie adaptations that we've had. These movies are by no means perfect, and they suffer from some of the same problems that previous entries on this list have, such as the humour falling flat, CGI looking a little bit wonky, and budget constraints obviously being an issue. Then we have what I like to call the David Jason factor. Now, don't get me wrong, I love David Jason. I think he's a fantastic actor, but he was criminally miscast in 2 of these movies. He played Albert in 2006's Hogfather and Rincewind in 2010's The Colour of Magic. Now, I think he made a better Albert than he made Rincewind, but he wasn't really right for either part. Now, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. I get the impression he's definitely a fan of Terry Pratchett. Maybe had some kind of monetary contribution to getting these films made. Of the 3 movies, I think that Hogfather, the first one they made, has probably lasted the best and probably gets rewatched most by fans. Maybe that's simply because it's kind of a Christmas movie, so it works. For my money, though, it was their final one, Going Postal, that was actually the highest in quality. I believe Sky had plans to make more of these, but unfortunately it was never to be. Also back in 2006, we have a 3-episode TV special of Johnny and the Bomb from ITV. I had no idea this even existed, and I haven't seen it. But then, Johnny and the Bomb, Johnny and the Dead are books that I've actually never read either. Quick cut in from Future Martin to say that actually it looks like you can watch this series right here on YouTube as well. So that's definitely something I'm going to be doing soon. Moving back in time once again, way back into the 90s now, 1997, we have 2 more beloved, if flawed, Discworld adaptations. Soul Music and Weird Sisters were both released in 1997 and were the first full-length Discworld adaptations we got. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, the mere fact that that is the case is probably why they still remain as popular as they do amongst fans. The animation and character designs, whilst not awful, could certainly be a lot better, although I do think we need to take into account the age of these pieces. But once again, I think these adaptations suffer from the humour not quite landing most of the time, which I think is a problem when you've got a series that is as wordy and as bookish as the Discworld is. A lot of the jokes come from the narration, the authorial voice, or plays on words and puns, and it is difficult to translate that into a visual format. What these did prove, though, is that Discworld does lend itself to animation, And that's definitely something I think that they could look at again in the future. I mean, they did do the Amazing Maurice film, so maybe they'll do some others. 1995 saw the release of another TV series that I have neither seen nor knew existed, Johnny and the Dead. This image is pretty much all I could find to commemorate the series. As I say, I've not seen it, and I never read those books, so I wouldn't even be able to properly kind of tell you how they compared, even if I had. If you have read the books and you have seen these Johnny adaptations, I'd love to know what you think in the comments. Future Martin again. As with the last Johnny series, it looks like this one is also available to watch right here on YouTube, as are some of the other Discworld adaptations, so definitely worth checking out. But the final entry on this list, and indeed the first Terry Pratchett TV adaptation, came in 1992 with the release of Truckers. Now, I was just 7 in 1992, so my memory is a little hazy, but I know I definitely watched this, and it stayed with me. What I can't remember is whether I watched the TV series first or read the books first. Given that I was 7, I have to assume that I watched the TV series first, which makes this series my first introduction to Terry Pratchett. It's a little hard to get hold of now. You can't stream it anywhere. You can get it on DVD, but it can be a little bit difficult to get hold of. So I haven't seen this for a very long time, but from what I remember, it was pretty accurate to the books, if a little creepy. And I say that because of the use of puppetry and stop motion that they went for. It was quite a dark looking series. I don't think that it necessarily didn't work. I think maybe it worked in its favor, but it did give it a certain vibe for sure. So that's the whole list. If you know of any other adaptations that I've missed, please do let me know in the comments. I would be fascinated to find out. And also let me know what you would like to see in the future. As I said at the start of the video, I know that not everybody gets excited about adaptations of books. People sometimes seem to think that they detract from the source material if they're not done well. I've never been of that kind of frame of mind, and I always get excited, even though I'm often then eventually disappointed. But let me know your thoughts, and let me know about your memories from any of these adaptations that you might have seen down the years. If you stuck with me this long, thank you for watching, and please do hit the like and subscribe button, because I'll be bound to do more Terry Pratchett content in the future.